Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Midwest Whitetail After Hours podcast presented to you by Hoyt. Today is, what is it, November 15th, and we're on episode number 5. I am joined by Mike Reed, Caleb Greiner, Collins Marine, and Kane Gillette. How's it going, guys?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Going good.
I got all the names right. That's a good start.
I mean, it's the best start ever.
I am proud of myself already. It's been a success. So what's been going on out there for you two guys in Illinois?
Illinois's been good. It was good this year. We had some timely weather there early on, that first week in November and through. I was kind of with Mike. I've been watching the podcast, and 6th and 7th were really good here. November 6th, I actually picked up a couple new permission pieces this year that I was hunting, and it was cool. The November 6th was my first hunt on one of them, and it's a cool little piece, but it's agriculture with a big ridgetop hardwood timber on it. And I wasn't able to get in there and hang cameras or anything this year. So I'd been on it one time this winter. I went and scouted it, hung a stand up on the top of this ridge, but then never was able to get back in there till November 6th. So we got up in there. Conditions were good, but it was cool. So for me, I've hunted the same farm. The first 23 years of my hunting career, I hunted the exact same farm. And then I've had to transition here the last couple of years onto some new pieces. So this one, I'm trying to figure it out, and I'm just basically going off Onyx on everything, which is totally different for me. Because when you hunt the same piece, like a lot of these guys know, you get used to, the farm kind of sets itself up every year, and you kind of know how it works, and the deer. And so it's just a different feeling for me. It almost was kind of like a public land feeling, I guess. But anyway, November 6th, we got up there for the first time. We had an encounter. It was at full draw. It was really cool. And then we went in there November 7th, went back in there on the bottom side of that ridge, and had an encounter with a totally different deer, came to full draw on that one. And it was cool. It was a cool, different experience for me, to just like, you see the deer and it's just like in your gut, you're like, I'm shooting that deer, because I've never seen this deer in my life, either of them, and it was just different. It was cool. It was exciting. Just added a little flavor back to it again. So, but other than that, conditions have been good. So it's been good. Had another really good encounter this past Sunday night up here, on a buck. Was on full draw again. So I was at full draw 3 times.
That's exciting.
Yeah, November 6th, November 7th, and November 13th, I was at full draw, but I have nothing to show for it except for some good footage. So
what's happening, Kane? What's preventing the arrow release?
Man, it's actually, I watched Caleb's on November 13th. I'm gonna blame Caleb specifically. I watched his
oh, you're watching TV.
Yep, I was watching those YouTube guys. I shouldn't watch them. And I had a buck at 42. It was dead calm. And I was just like, I'm not going to do it. He's going to jump the string, and he acted like he was going to come in a little closer. So I let up my draw. And of course, as soon as I let up my draw, he decided to feed out to like 45 and just never came back. So we'll blame Caleb on that one. And then November 6th, just the buck got downwind of us. Just nothing I could do there. He caught, stopped a couple steps short, and that saved his life. And then November 7th, the morning of the 7th, the doe got underneath of us before he ever got inside 50. And she was literally licking the ladder and just knew that wasn't right. And she took him with him, one of those deals. So,
were you running cameras in there, Kane, or are these like all deer that just came in November you didn't have any history with? Or sorry, didn't know?
On that permission piece, I don't know any. I was never able to get cameras on them because it had standing corn. So I literally I never ran a camera on it. So that was what was cool about it. Once I started hunting, like, it was just, you're just going off gut. There's no intel on there. So that was sweet. But on the 13th, that was at our new home farm. And actually I knew that deer. So that was cool. Just the other side of it. But
are you still seeing rutting activity, or what's it looking like?
Yeah. The last time I hunted was Sunday. I've been back in the office the last 2 days. but I'm still seeing rutted activity. And then even today I had, 2 mature bucks on the home farm that they're daylighting still, they're clearly off a doe looking for that last doe. So, yeah, I'm still seeing it pretty good here. How about you guys?
Yeah.
All I can do is
I
base what I've seen off of trail camera, until the last 2 days. But I would echo the same thing. And from what I'm seeing, there's some big deer on their feet, minus a doe. I would say they're out looking again.
yeah. I think it's interesting. We say that November 15th is supposed to be peak, so you think most of them will be locked down, and most of those are in estrus. And these last few days has been, at least on my farm, it seems like there's quite a few bucks in between does and moving around looking, and so there's just been a lot of activity. Obviously, the conditions have been really good. Friday, so let's see. Trying to think when we did our last podcast, but Saturday morning we did it Friday, right? I think.
Yep.
Yeah. So Saturday morning I couldn't get out. I had some family stuff, didn't get out. Conditions were great. That big front blew through Thursday, Friday. So Saturday morning I didn't get out. Did some family stuff. Got in there pretty early after lunch, and I just was like, I got a few days to hunt basically before I go on my elk hunt in Arizona. So I this one particular area where my stand is, it's right kind of on the edge of the bedding area, a little bit into the bedding area, basically on the fringe. It's easy to get there in the dark, and hunt the thermals, but it's like, let's just try to sneak in there. And that one day I hunted all day on November 7th, there was, I think 7, 8, 9 different deer bedded around us the majority of the midday. I was like, I don't know if this is going to work, but the ditch is dry. We snuck all the way in there, get to the base tree. I'm like, yeah, we got to the tree. All right. And I'm climbing up. I need a hang rise stand. And I get about 3 rungs up, and I look, I hear a chase coming. It's a little buck and a doe and a fawn. And the fawn's trying to stay with mom, and the buck's chasing that doe everywhere. And they run off. And I told her, I'm going to get up there and get your stand hung. We'll get in. I get up in the stand and I look, and here they're coming back, and this time my target buck's with them.
No.
And they are just charging in. I'm like, it's him. And Rye's like, what? I'm 25 feet up in the tree. And I'm like, put my bow on the rope. So he switches to my the standout for my bow. And they're at 55 yards. And Rye's on the ground, and I'm like pulling the bow up. And he's just staring at this little 3-year-old, just snort wheezing. And of course, Rye's laying on the ground trying to get the scene. So I have a GoPro running at the base of the tree to get me like hanging the set. So we don't really have any of this on camera, unfortunately. And then from the other side, we have a fawn coming in and a doe and a spike, and they come in to about 3 yards, and somehow Rye never got picked off. And I'm in the tree just like, how is this doe not blowing, and right whenever she sees him, it's like, whoa, what's that thing? The little spike just runs in and chases the doe off. So we have to remember that doe and spare her, because that spike, spare the spike. But anyway, Kelsey chased off that buck, and then chased the doe off to the north, and we got set up in the tree, and I was hoping they might spin back through there, but never saw him again. And then the next day I was like, we're gonna just go in there and sit in there all day. He's still looking for a doe. Hopefully he hasn't locked down yet, because the Friday afternoon, I went and hunted a different spot because I didn't like the wind for that spot, and he was on camera all in front of that stand, obviously without a doe. So Saturday went in the afternoon, saw him. Sunday went back in, and the wind was supposed to switch from north to west right around 11 o'clock or noon, and the west isn't great for that stand, and north is perfect. So we snuck in there. We had a good hunt, not as good as some of the other ones, but it was a real solid hunt. And it was 11:30, and I said, we need to close it up and get out of here. The wind has started blowing out of the west, and we were shooting some interviews for the main show and doing this kind of thing. And 11:55, I catch moving, and I look over, and there he is, and he's just by himself, just coming in. And there were 2 fawns bedded over there, And normally the deer stay on a trail and they go a little bit wide, and the wind isn't as much as an issue. But those fawns were bad there, so he came and bumped them up, and worked the rub a little bit, and he's just walking straight to the tree, but from straight downwind. And basically, Rye's like, "Oh my God!" I'm like, "This isn't going to happen. It's not going to work," So the deer's just marching straight at us, and he could have seen us, but I think he probably got a little bit of wind and saw us, but he just stopped and looked, and he's like, "Whoa!" Two giant grizzly bears in the tree up there. I'm high, but we stick off of that tree pretty good from that direction, and Kelsey acted like a little doe, just lost his mind. He stood there and he stomped and stomped, and then he started blowing and running and blowing, and I was like, "This is awesome." So yeah, he ran off, and I was like, "There you go." So yeah, the one spot I didn't want him to come from, he marched right in, and I mean, it's still cool to see him 2 days in a row. Obviously, between that group of days, and I'm hoping he's either still looking, which seems very unlikely, or he got with one shortly thereafter, and it's freeing up, because I'm going to be in there tomorrow, and just I picked out a different tree for that straight west. Tomorrow we have a straight west, so we're actually going to get in there, real early and hang a set, and try to catch him moving into that bedding area again. I mean, it's not impossible to catch up with him if he's with a doe. Even if that doe moves in there, just everybody likes to be in that one spot. So I got one last chance before we leave, so we'll see. Wish me luck.
Yeah. You and
I
Caleb
feel
are having all kinds of close encounters.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just trying to be like Caleb. He's my idol. I don't.
Whatever. When do you leave for Arizona, Mike? Isn't that like a super rare tag, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a late season rifle tag. I think I have 9 years of preference points that I've put into it, and they were saying probably 15 years to draw archery for the unit I was going in, and we were talking. I was talking with some guys, and they said, "Man, there's this one spot for late rifle with this guy that if you get drawn, it could be good. It's supposed to be changing next year, so it may not. The way the draw is going to work for that spot. They kind of change it for resident, non-resident, and I'm applying for non-resident archery in a bunch of states." And I said, "Well, I'd love to go do a late season rifle hunt. Let's go ahead and apply." And he told me it's about 2% draw odds, and lo and behold, I drew the tag. So of course, it's the month of November. So I told him before we applied, I said, "Look, man, I kind of got some stuff going on in November." So I said I needed to be like after Thanksgiving, and like the last 5 days of the season, which would have been like the 28th to the 3rd of December. And it just worked out the way it landed, that I'm going the 20th to the 25th, and I may be able to stay and hunt a couple days. He doesn't have a hunter following me, so my last day of hunting is supposed to be Thanksgiving Day. And I think if we haven't killed one, I might be able to stay a few more days before I work my way back. So,
Nice.
it's Arizona. There's some giant bulls up there, and I've not done a late rifle hunt out west, but these guys are going to try to kind of scout out some bulls, and then we're going to get in there, and I don't know really what to do. Wherever they find one, we're just going to basically be chasing them and staying out there in the mountains and being cold and everything else. So I have to keep Rye warm.
Yeah. Sounds like
It ought to
fun.
be fun. We'll see how it goes. A new experience.
Heck yeah.
What have you been seeing, Caleb?
Man, I've actually been seeing really good activity this year. It started off slow, like I've said in the past, but we've been bouncing around. Actually, one of my favorite stands that we actually encountered, that hunt where I drew back on him at 40, or sorry, I didn't shoot him at 40. It was just dead calm. It's right there by the bedding. It's similar spot that what Mike was just describing. It's right there on the bedding. It's a little funnel that comes into it, and these deer just have been coming right by the stand more so frequently the past couple of days. But backing up like 4 days ago, I decided to hunt a rye plot because it was going to be warmer. And of course, Hog Jr., this deer I've been hunting, walked 20 yards right under the stand. So that day was a swing and a miss. And just so happened, I believe that was the day that night I had to go home, edit some blogs, stayed up till about 1 o'clock, and I wanted to get about 30 minutes of sleep because I stayed up all night the day before editing. and I plugged my phone in. I heard that ding sound or whatever, and thought I was good to go. Well, woke up at 6 o'clock, and the stand I had to edit that day, so I couldn't hunt. And the stand that I wanted to hunt over, of course, who do you think walked by at 15 yards working at vine scrape twice? Was this freaking deer. And going into the next day, you know, we had a really good encounter with him. He was 80 yards, but we had 5 little bucks chasing this hot doe right in front of us at 30 yards in the CRP, and a big old mature bully 8-point came in, pushed him off. Well, he took him into the sanctuary timber, this bedding area, and I thought I caught a glimpse of Hog Jr. out in the sanctuary earlier that morning. Well, here about 2 hours later, right in the north, he came down at probably 40 yards, and he was on that doe, and that 8-point was with him, so he must have pushed that buck off. He took her into the sanctuary, and we had another really good encounter with a good deer that I've been calling guards. And gosh, I don't know if you guys got out today, but it was stellar conditions. It was beautiful. It was snowy. Kind of like you guys have been saying, you know, the buck activity is kind of diminished, but there's still a few bucks cruising. We had that guards buck. He's a 5-year-old. He came in today. He was pushing does around, but we had to get out about midday, had to do some work again this evening. But as on the drive home, it seems like we're definitely in that lockdown stage. I saw bucks with does in the middle of fields absolutely everywhere. So I think we're definitely on that peak breeding time, but at the same time, these bucks are still cruising for does. If you can catch them off a doe, I mean, they are super callable. It was one of my favorite encounters from the past week, actually, was with this guards deer. I thought it was a 12. I put the knocks on him, and he was probably 200 yards away in the CRP. And I'm like, oh, it's a 12 to Jacob. And I grab the horns, and Jacob gets on him with a camera, and I start tickling him. And as soon as I smashed him that first time, that deer just did a 180 and started sprinting into the tree. And I gave him a little more and hung him up. And I looked over, and I'm like, God crap, it's this guards deer. And he stayed out at 50, and he kind of lost interest a little bit, started turning around. I looked over at Jacob. I'm like, you know, why don't we get him in here 20 yards, get some good content? So I chose to do a couple doe bleats, and sure enough, I did 3 or 4 of those, and he came straight to the tree 20 yards. And I was doing some reflecting, and of course I didn't have my call with me the day that Hog Jr. came in to I forget which encounter that was, but I think 40. And I did a couple snort wheezes, a couple breeding grunts, and I had his attention, but I think if I would have had that doe bleat, I think if I would have painted that picture that buck had a doe with him, I think it might have made him maybe commit to us. But gosh, the power of a doe bleat right now is just absolutely incredible. I mean, we were bleeding bucks in just for fun all day today. It was enjoyable.
How many encounters have you had with Hog Jr. now?
To be honest, I don't know, but
you lost count.
it's hilarious. It's hilarious, you guys. I mean, if I went through the trail cam pictures and just kept track of the days that I wanted to go hunt this one stand and I had to work, or I chose to go hunt a different stand instead just because the wind was wrong or something, I mean, I probably could have killed this deer like 8 times. It's ridiculous how many times it's been daylight under me when I'm not there. But yeah, it's fun, man. I mean, it's been a mouse or a cat and mouse game the whole way through, and hopefully we can close the chapter on him here soon. We'll see.
It's a matter of time.
We'll see. Man, I want to hear about Collins' kill though. I heard.
Let's hear about that.
Yeah,
some action with the decoy, eh?
Yeah, I did get him with the decoys. That's become pretty fun the last couple of years. I like Kane was saying, I had off of work from the 4th to the 7th, that Friday and Monday. So I hunted all that weekend, and the deer that I ended up killing is a deer that I'd never seen before on the farm. And I hunted that Friday. If you guys can remember, it was raining, like downpour all day. And so I actually hopped in a redneck that morning and sitting over just some clover and turnips, a plot that I knew a lot of does came to. And right at first light, I had a bunch of deer out there, and a lot of little bucks, young bucks. And I had the decoy out that day too, and had a lot of young ones coming up to the decoy, and you know, they'd come up and nothing would quite take them on, but they'd come up and mess with them and walk off. And it started to downpour basically. And right when it started to downpour, I had this one buck that had just shown up come out to the edge of the field, and he started coming into the decoy, and I've actually got it on video. You can see it like sprinkling, and then as he's coming, it progressively like starts pouring, and like the vision just, you can't see the deer hardly at all after that. And I think that just made him turn around. But that was a mature, I think he's probably 5.5 years old. He ended up going back in, but it only rained hard for probably, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes. And as soon as it stopped, I had this buck that I'd never seen before. I actually thought at first it was this 8-point that I'd seen earlier in that morning. Well, he comes out and I realized it's this 10-point, super narrow, but like tall, and couldn't really tell at first, like if it was a shooter or not. But he basically is walking the edge of the field, and I don't think he saw the decoy yet. So I grunted at him, and he saw the decoy and started coming, but he hung up at like 60 yards and just wouldn't quite commit to the decoy. But he'd like turn away and start walking away, and I'd grunt or snort whiz at him. And every time I do that, he'd turn around and come like 5 yards closer and then turn around and leave. And he ended up not committing to the decoy that morning. Like I think the closest he got was 55, 60 yards. And he ended up walking out into the turnips. And so that was like the first time I'd ever seen this deer. And on that farm, it's a big river bottom. So Caleb and anybody, Mike, that hunts river bottoms, you know how much those deer travel, especially this time of the year through there, just random bucks. But we've got enough cameras running on them that it's still kind of unlikely usually to see a random deer like that. And so I was kind of excited, like, oh shoot, like this is a deer I might actually go after, because all the deer I was hunting down there were just kind of older, mature bucks. And so that was the first encounter I had with him. And then the next day I actually hunted with Elizabeth, and we hunted that morning, it rained that morning. So I actually went duck hunting. Had a nice hunt. I had a really nice duck hunt. And then
you and Jason.
Yeah. But about noon that day, me and Elizabeth actually went back to that same blind, and she was behind the bow. I was just filming, and we had another super good hunt. Had an encounter with the big 7.5-year-old that he's just one of the prettiest coats I've ever seen. He's got a big old gray face, and just super good movement. He came, it was windy that day, and of course, right before he came out to the field, my decoy blew over. And I was able to snort wheeze him across the field, but he got to like 60, and we had some does that had crossed in front of us, and he didn't see the buck that snort wheezed at him, and he caught that scent trail of them does and just put his head straight to the ground and followed them off. But then it had been that was the 5th. So then the 6th was a super good morning. It was pretty cold that morning, and I took Elizabeth out again and had another super good encounter with a mature 8-point, and basically just snort wheezed him in, and same thing happened. He got to like 55 and got on a trail that a doe had crossed earlier that day, and put his nose straight to the ground and followed that out, and we just couldn't keep his interest. So I mean, that was 3 days of 4 really good buck encounters, and so I was riding high. I mean, it was some really good hunting. And then that Monday I hunted and didn't see a whole lot, but still, I mean, nothing mature. But then so I had to work that week, and then last Friday I had off again, and that's the day I actually ended up killing this buck. And so that morning I went out and hunted, and hunted that same spot where Elizabeth and I hunted that Sunday. And that's actually the same spot where she shot her buck last year. It's just a really good little bedding area. You get any kind of north wind, it seems like these bucks cruise that downwind side of that bedding area. And we just have a lot of good activity in there. And that morning was probably one of the best mornings I've had in a long time. There was a ton of movement early. And then I actually had a chase come through. I had a doe come sprinting in, and she stopped 15 yards in front of my stand, just panting, looking behind her. And I couldn't see anything, but I knew, like, obviously when a doe's looking like that, she's probably got something chasing her. And 15 seconds later, here comes 2 bucks just out of their minds, running through the timber, trying to find her. And they finally spot her and take her off. And they end up going back to my south. And then this buck that I actually encountered, a different buck, I ended up passing this one. He's super mature, but he unfortunately, he's got a big split on one side and then he busted his beam. So I elected to pass him, but he came in and come right under the stand. And then I actually had, soon after that, another hot doe come into the area and come into that timber, and another new buck that I'd never seen before. He was a younger one, but just a nice 8. He was tending her really hard. Had a bunch of other young bucks coming in there, and he'd walk them off, run them off every time. And he was in there till, I mean, probably noon. I sat till noon, and I was just, I mean, I figured I had 2 hot does in the area, and this spot, like, it's small enough that if I had, I mean, it's a big farm, but this particular area, I figured if any of these mature bucks that I was in there after were actually in that area, I probably would have seen them by now. Cause I mean, 2 hot does, I gave it, I don't know, 6 hours or whatever that morning, and it was noon and still hadn't seen one of them. So, I mean, usually you don't leave a hot doe, but I just had a feeling that they were probably somewhere else on the farm, because these deer were dominant. And if this younger 3-year-old was running all these other deer off, I just felt like that buck, those mature bucks were probably on a different part of the farm. So I kind of risked it and elected to leave that spot at noon and go back to that blind that I had the encounter with that buck, the surprise buck that I ended up killing. And so I actually got into the blind that night. I got in probably 12:30, and it was really slow at midday. I was expecting to see more cruising, because that's in a really good funnel between 2 big bedding areas. And first year I saw was like 2:30, and then it was kind of steady from there on out. I had a couple other young bucks come into the decoy. I was using the decoy again, and that plot is just perfect because the blind's kind of set up off the in the middle of the plot, and I got the beans fenced off, and basically it's a pretty far shot to the edge of the plot, so that decoy just brings them in that extra 50 yards, I guess. And I had several younger bucks come up to the decoy, and they're super responsive to the calls that day. And had 2 does come out, and then a younger buck was chasing them around, and it was getting pretty late. It was probably 4:45, and the one buck had ran those 2 does off, and had a couple other bucks come cruising through and work through. And then about 4:45, I had 2 fawns come into the plot, and they worked out into the turnips and were feeding out there. And they were out there for maybe 10 minutes, and I could see a body coming up through this. It reminds me a lot of what Mike calls the park. It's just kind of this big open grassy area with some cottonwoods and maples and stuff. And I could see a body working through there, and I put the binos up, and it was this buck that I hadn't seen. I mean, I saw him in person, and I had one picture of him that week. It was like I think it was actually that Monday, the 7th. I saw him. He was on a doe on that food plot. That was the only picture I had of him, and hadn't had anything since. And lo and behold, here he comes cruising out to the plot. And he got to the edge of the plot and kind of stops and looks up and sees that decoy. And he just got that look to him, and he starts marching all the way across the plot. And he probably came, I don't know, 150 yards across the plot, just straight to the decoy. And at the time, so I'm self-filming, so I get the camera on him, and I'm filming him all the way across the plot. And then I kind of had the decoy set up so that ideally he'd like come in facing it and kind of give me in a straight broadside or quartering away shot. And of course he comes like perpendicular right at the blind and just is staring. Like I got the decoy right between me and him, and he's just standing there, like he snort wheezes at the decoy. You know how they get, sometimes they'll start pawing the ground, basically making a scrape and huffing, and he's just getting all pissed off. And he stands there for probably 5-6 minutes and like won't attack the decoy, but he's standing within 2 yards of him and just looking at him. And I'm just waiting for him to draw. Like I can't draw back yet. I want him to turn sideways because I don't want to stay drawn back for, I don't know when he's going to turn. And basically he ends up turning sideways, getting broadside. So I draw back, and I don't know if he saw me drawing back, heard something, but he kind of, right as I'm drawing back, he bounds out to like 30. I'm like, son of a gun. And so I got to draw him back. I got to adjust the camera to get it back onto him and get him back in the screen. And he's at 30 yards, and I let it fly, and it hit a little bit more forward than I was hoping, but basically it like took out his shoulders and he started bulldozing all the way through the field. And he bedded up at the edge of the plot, and I could see him panting really hard. So I knew it was hurting pretty bad, and I could see blood coming out. And he ended up getting up, and then he couldn't make it very far and fell right back down onto the edge of the plot. But I lost him, and I couldn't really like see him in the tall grass. And so I elected to get out of there and just give him some time, go back home and look at the footage. And I actually ended up getting Rye came down to help, and we went out to track, and it ended up being just a red carpet of blood. And we went right up to him. And like I said, I have no idea how I didn't see him die right there on the edge of the field, but he was basically half in the field and half out. And he was expired right there. So I was pretty pumped up, and the
That's
celebration began.
Dude, that's
Nice.
awesome.
Nice work.
But yeah, he was a cool deer. I've never shot one like him. And this farm, I don't know if it's a river bottom thing or just this area, but most of the deer are like, you get super wide, just kind of typical 10s. You don't get much character to him. And this deer, he had good beam length, but he was just like goes straight up and out. And I don't know. He just, ever since that first encounter with him, and he kind of, it was a deer I wanted to shoot. So I was definitely tickled to wrap a tag around him.
Would you say that you more often than not have luck with the decoy versus spooking a deer? Not
Yeah,
a deer.
I hear a lot of people say they have issues like spooking deer with decoys, and I've used them a lot in the last several years, and honestly, I can't remember one deer that I spooked. Maybe a doe will come up every once in a while, but even in this particular plot anyway, like I used it several sits this year, and does would just come up. They'd be curious about it, but they'd go on with their business. And I mean, I don't know. I had so many bucks come up to it, and they actually right after I shot this buck, one of the bucks, that 7.5-year-old that I was talking about that has that real gray face, he came out right after I killed my buck, and I could hear him bleating or grunting. It was a real soft grunt on the edge of the field, and he didn't even skip a beat, marched right into the decoy and absolutely exploded it. Like I had decoy pieces flown everywhere.
That's awesome.
Kind of cool footage.
What do you do for scent control on the decoy? You take any particular precautions or spray it or use gloves or anything
Honestly,
like that?
So I used to put some of that not the nose jammer, the Evercalm on it, just kind of on the back side of it. That seemed to work. But this year I've just been using nose jammer. And I think the biggest thing is just putting him in a position where if the buck you do want to kill gets downwind of it, he's within range. And like that, I mean, I haven't had any deer blow out of it, like because they smelled it. The one thing I do with that one too, at that spot, I just leave my decoy there and kind of out of the element, so it gets all that air and just kind of the natural smells onto it. And I think that probably helps a lot.
Yeah, sure.
But I don't know. I like using them. It's fun seeing those deer react to them. And
Definitely.
I mean, you get a 7.5-year-old to come up to them. All them younger ones, they just they don't fully commit. And then that 7.5-year-old didn't even skip a beat, and he just went into kill mode.
Oh man, that's something. I can't wait to see that footage.
Yeah, it was a fun hunt.
Any idea when that's going to air, Mike?
Yeah, I think probably we haven't nailed down what's going to go where, but we've got both the Owens kills for sure. Wolverine's going to be next Monday, and then we were kind of talking about, do we do the wide 9 the next Monday and then Collins the week after that, or do we give Collins in between Owens 2 kills? But one of these upcoming Mondays, I think we should get it on there. Couple weeks probably.
Okay, cool. One quick question for you, Collins. If you're in a big field, do you shy away from that when you're using a decoy, or do you do something different, set up maybe in a corner or something like that?
Yeah, honestly, a big field is where I'd be more inclined to use one, honestly, just because it's harder to get them within bow range usually. And I've used them in, I mean, this field that I'm hunting is probably 5 acres. It's a food plot. And I mean, which is a relatively decent sized field for a food plot. And then I've used them in big open ag fields, like 100-acre fields, and same results with them. I do think when you get one in a smaller food plot, though, it almost gives that sense of like I kind of relate it to turkey hunting. When you get inside their bubble, it kind of makes them a little more
Sober.
angry and amped to, yeah.
Right.
And when you can get inside that deer's bubble and they walk out to a food plot and see a decoy out there, and especially if there's does out in the food plot already, it just gets them a little more pissed off.
Amped up.
Yeah.
I was able to get out Sunday morning with my partner, son Gavin, and I actually asked him the night before about where he wanted to sit. I was down at in the southwest part of the state, and he just said, "I want to try the decoy." And
Yeah.
I really don't have a whole lot of open spaces. At least there's some ag fields now, CRP, I guess, on the east side. But it's a pretty well-traveled road, and they seem to shy away from that. But David Bland was in a couple of years ago, and he hunted with me for a week, and he put up a set, or at least he told me he did, on one side of the property that overlooks this big CRP field. And the CRP field is kind of almost in an hourglass shape. And we had a buck come out relatively early, and I grunted at him, and he came in on a string to a certain point, and then he kind of locked up, and you could tell he was gonna head downwind. And he eventually did head downwind, and he used kind of the terrain to get underneath us and then come around, and then he came out, that knoll, and he was going to get downwind, so I grabbed the grunt call and did a snort wheeze, and he ran into probably Illinois. And Gavin's kind of looking at me going, "What was that?" So I've had luck with a decoy. Actually, my son shot one over at, boy, it's a long time ago, probably 2019, 20, something like that.
Yeah.
But I've always found it challenging when you're in a big spot like that. It'd be nice if you could get into a corner or something like that where you can at least steer them a little bit. But I don't know if you guys have come across anything that works better than something else for a big field like that.
Walk up to him with a deer shield.
There you go. It's a
Yes.
big mirror.
Now we're talking.
I have heard of guys putting
Turkey
them
fan.
out. I have heard of guys putting them out, like, say you put your decoy out a little past like what your effective range might be, and that way when they do try to get downwind, they like come in between you and the decoy, and then they're within bow range. I know Caleb and I had a hunt a couple of years ago, and we were actually using a doe decoy, and this was completely our fault. We were new to decoys, but we called this buck in from, I don't know what, 200-300 yards probably. Yeah. And he came on a string and came right to the doe decoy, but we had it positioned too close to us and not far enough upwind that when he got downwind of the decoy, he was basically out of our shooting range. And if we had positioned that decoy further upwind, he'd have been right in our laps. And that's kind of when I learned that, like, that's what
matters
you need to do. Yeah.
That was the last week of regular bow season too, right?
Yeah, it was after Thanksgiving.
Yeah, so those decoys, I mean, right now,
That's fun.
What would you say, Collins? You use your decoy a lot more than what I would probably. So what would you say? Would it get better as later we go on, do you think? Or
yeah, I mean, I know guys that use them from middle of October all the way to even December. I mean, like, they obviously stay aggressive. Like Mike was able to grunt a buck in December. What was that urban buck?
Yeah. 2015. Yeah. I've done a few. I've grunted snort wheeze bucks in after Thanksgiving quite a few times. They're in the field. They're kind of keep fending off other bucks. They're super mature deer. Yeah, just keep teasing them, grunting or snort wheezing back into the cover, and eventually they just can't take it. They come walk over. But
Yeah.
I haven't decoyed very much. I mean, I know that in general we talk about, bucks normally approach a buck head on and those from behind, and you try to set them up like you said so they swing. But would you switch? Do you have a doe and a buck, and would you use a doe later on, or you just keep using a buck, or you have any thoughts on that?
So I've used a buck a lot more. I've honestly had more deer with a doe decoy, kind of shy away from it. It's like even more does I've had blow at my doe decoy than a buck decoy for, I don't know what the reasoning is, but
Just,
like they get territorial. The does do.
that's what we'll call it.
Yeah. And but yeah, I don't know. I haven't used my doe decoy in a couple of years, but I know I've seen a lot of people, they'll do like both at the same time this time of year.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
It seems like after the 15th, I mentioned that David Blanton was in, and he pretty much, while he hunted that whole lease there in the southwest part of the state, he hunted the entire time with the decoy, and he had encounter after encounter with deer that he didn't want to shoot, but it seemed like he used them a lot too, and he kind of said that he had better luck later in the season than he did early in the season. And then that just makes sense, I guess.
Yeah.
But and I've heard the same thing about doe decoys, but I've also used a doe decoy. I had one run up to 150 yards straight across the field right in to me. But they don't act the same way around a doe decoy that they do a buck decoy. They're not going to posture that thing and slowly slide around and give you a quartering away shot or anything like that. They're just going to charge right in.
Yeah.
I didn't think about that when I set the decoy out. I didn't get a shot, so he blew out of there as quick as he blew in.
Oh.
Anybody have anything else they want to talk about? Kane? You guys in gun season yet in Illinois?
That's what, yeah, if I was gonna say anything, I'm pretty much done for a little bit here. We've got our first shotgun season starts Friday, and that goes through Sunday. So I don't really get into the gun hunting as much anymore. So I'll be out. I try to use that time to get with my dad. I like to he's still gun hunts, so I go out and just spend some time with him. But yeah, we start Friday. So, and that's always a little nerve-wracking weekend because they're still just enough fired up here for that weekend. And then this week, I don't know what the weather is for you guys, but it's like a high of like 19 degrees throughout the weekend. So
it's gonna be god awful.
Gonna be chilly.
Yeah.
Our gun season starts Saturday, and so we've got my partner's two boys are coming up, and my son is coming home from San Diego from the Marines for 6 days. He's gonna be on a couple of them, which will be pretty cool. So
that'll be fun.
Yeah, be more involved in the rifle season. Yeah, looking forward to it, especially with all those young folks there, and it's fun to see them get excited. And
that's right.
Yeah, good times.
Well, good luck to you guys.
Yeah, well, good luck to you. It sounds like you're up and away here in a few days.
Yeah, I need all the luck for tomorrow. I gotta pull it off tomorrow. I mean, there's still plenty of season left, but boy, I'd love to get them down tomorrow. That'll be my last bow hunt here in Iowa until I get back, and I'll probably get back from Arizona a couple days after Thanksgiving. So we'll have another week there before shotgun rolls in, that I might be able to get out a little bit. I'm not going to take a whole lot of time off that week after being off for Arizona. So we'll basically be, looking at late season. So
Cool.
It's crazy to be talking about that already.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
These tents get you fired up for it.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, that is true. It is cold and snow. I mean, I love it. Actually, I can't get enough of it. So.
Have you noticed any more or less deer hitting food plots now with this colder weather?
What's funny is I haven't been hunting over food very much.
Yeah,
I've been sticking to the edge of the bedding, and they're still just going nutty where I am as far as that goes. I'm sure. I mean, driving down the road and stuff, you know, I feel like in the cut corn, cut beans, you might be seeing more of that or whatever. But we just took fences down, you know, to get ready. You know, I want them to be able to find it and start feeding on it. I mean, just never got around to it. I still had fences up around quite a few of the corn plots, and so
Nice.
you know, we'll see if they can. I had taken some down early. They're 8-acre fields, you know, so
Yeah.
it's corn. So I mean, I don't know what they're doing in there. Can't see anything.
Yeah.
It's half corn, half ragweed. Since I'm such a good farmer. It's,
Are you doing it the organic way? Is that what's
yeah,
going
baby.
on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's a bedding / feeding area. It's good enough, you know. Jesus. Anyway.
Does Kelsey stay on you late season, Mike? Should you go to one of your other pieces?
No, you know, he's one of these deer that really seems to hang out on this property. And, you know, I've been filming him since he's a 3-year-old. And, you know, this year more than ever early, he seemed to be, you know, I had cameras on the edges where he was leaving and coming back. But I mean, for the last month, he's been just tight in one area. You know, he could be going across the river, but, you know, talking with the neighbors, they're like, we're not getting pictures of him. And I get pictures of him on the same couple cameras every day, and not every day, but every other day or whatever. And I think he's got plenty of those, and he's not having to go too far. So we'll see, though. You know, this next week or two, they certainly can move around quite a bit looking. So
Right.
But I had his. I got a picture of him. I think, yeah, it wasn't last night. It was last night. Yeah. So he was. There's one scrape in particular that that's his little spot. You know, he likes to go there. It lets me know he's alive and he's still at least in the area. So we'll see. I mean, yeah, I think it was probably like 6 hours after he blew, and I was like, and then I had him on that scrape, and I was like, I'm like, well, he didn't run to the next county. He sounded like he did. I was like, he's still blowing. I was like, wow. You know? And he just kept going. And I was like, I think he made it all the way home. But anyway, he's still in there. So
it makes for good TV.
Today. Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Yeah. It brings on it gives plenty of opportunity for, you know, criticism and judgment. So that's what we want.
Perfect.
Yeah. I need someone to help me. So
yeah.
All right, guys. If nobody's got anything else, anybody? We're good.
Good luck, Caleb.
Yeah, good luck.
Right, same to you guys.
Get it done.
That's right. Take it easy, guys. Good night.
All right, thanks, guys. Have a great night. We're out.